In today's digital age, web accessibility is more important than ever. At Weber State University, we believe in providing equal access to information and resources. Web accessibility ensures that everyone, including individuals with disabilities, can navigate and interact with our websites. Assistive technologies like screen readers and keyboard navigation play a vital role in enabling individuals with visual or motor impairments to access online content. This training will take place in Site Manager, Weber State's website management software. Let's jump right in and discuss the naming of website pages. And this one should be as close as possible to your URL. It should describe what the page is, and what this is you'll notice that whatever you put in this field is what you will see in the tab at the top of your browser. So if I type in accessibility test here, that's what's going to come up here at the top of the browser. And by keeping that similar to this and by describing the page you're in, you are helping not only users find content, but also search engines. So that both of those are very important to do. Let's see here. So that covers descriptive page titles. Next is using color. So what that means is, if I'll click on this page and I'll show you what that means. So first of all, let's talk about contrast. So if you're looking at this portion of the box, you'll see that there are some examples there. Great color contrast would be like black on white. Adequate color contrast would be an example of maybe doing Weber purple on top of white. It's adequate, but maybe not as good as it could be. And then this bottom one is an example of insufficient color contrast. I can see that, and there are a couple factors that go into that. You could have a disability that prevents you from reading that, or you could have a monitor that isn't high quality enough to render that to the point where it's readable, or you might have your settings set differently to where some people just wouldn't even be able to see that, or they'd really have to strain to be able to read that. So we have a couple guidelines here. This top one is for 18 points or lower size, and then also some standards here. We'll get into testing in a few moments, and I'll mention the different grading for web accessibility. There are two different grades, and the university tries to at least get the bare minimum of what's called AA rating. This one here, this blue one, would meet AA rating. This blue one does not meet AA or AAA rating. Next up is color coding. So if you've got some cues that are just color, like let's say one denotes one thing and one denotes something else, and you're using just a variance in color, that's not good for accessibility, because some people may not be able to tell the difference between the two colors here, whether it be by blindness or disability, or color blindness or some other disability. So it's a good idea to, at least in parentheses or in some other way, denote some meaning of why that's a different color. So you don't want to rely just on a different color to separate meaning between two items or more. Any questions to that point? Okay. Next, we'll talk about heading structure. So what this is, you'll find this, and once again, these concepts, you'll notice there's a lot of crossover in the document accessibility. So a lot of these are also good practices for when you're creating documents. But let me open an edit screen here. And so the way Weber State templates are set up is we actually have a field here that enters your page title. And when you hover over this area, you can see that you can add that in there. What that does, each page should have one, what's called an H1 title. So you've probably noticed this on other Weber State websites. That's typically the first thing you see is this purple heading. That is an H1. And then as you build the page, it's okay to have paragraph text underneath, but then when you have a new heading, what you want to do, so subheading 1, that would actually be, I would come up here and I would make that an H2. So you'll notice this as you go through Weber State websites, or really any website. This, once again, this is not only just for accessibility, this is also something that Google looks for in SEO. It is looking for making sure that your page is not only accessible, but built in a correct way for heading structure. So like I said, you can have paragraph text, which is just the default text under these, but then if you do a new heading, now I said you only want to have one H1 per page, but it is okay to have 2 subheadings, let's say if they're kind of at the same level. So I'll take off the 1 to prevent confusion, but really I can have another H2. But if I'm going down to something that's maybe a heading under that H2, that's when I would introduce an H3. And you'll notice that as you set these, they're already formatted in kind of a descending size. So you have your H1, which is the most noticeable. There should only be 1 on the page. And then you'll want to go in order with the rest. But I'll show you in a minute, I'll show you a Weber State webpage where there's also several heading 3s that have text under them. So it's okay to do that. What I don't want to do is have a heading 2 and then come down here and go right to heading 4. So if I do that, I'm jumping a whole level, and when a screen reader accesses a page, it's trying to decide the hierarchy of the page in the best way to present it to the person who has a given disability. So if you have an H1, it will first go to that, and then it'll read whatever text is under there, then it will find the H2, and then if it has another H2, it'll find that one, and then it will go to the next heading. But then there are some situations where there are different sections on the page, and you may go back to an H2, which is fine, and then H3 under that. I'll give you an example. I'll show you this that I've created. So in this case, right now, so I purposely set this up as an H2 because I see this on web pages a lot. People will choose this. They think that this is kind of a formatting thing, that it's like, oh, I like the look of the H2 better than the H1. And that's not a good idea because one thing, you've gone out of consistency with other Weber web pages, and for 2, you've made it so the page is not accessible. So hang on just one moment here. Ignore what I'm doing here for a moment. Well, there's a reason why we don't have an H1 in this list, and that is because there's only 1 for each page. You should only have 1, and in most templates, you'll find that in the space I showed you, if that makes sense. So next, we come down here. So this would be my H1. Sorry, give me a second here. There we go. That's what I'm trying to find. So you wouldn't have to do this on your template because you would have the opportunity to put it in that field, but I'm just, for the purposes of this, I'm going to change that to an H1. So you would typically do that where I showed you in that purple field on the other page. So like I said, it's okay to have paragraph text. You'll notice that when I highlight this, this is also in that list. That's just called normal text. And that's fine to have those in between. But then this purple section is a new section. So what this needs to be, if it's the next subheading, then that needs to be a heading too. And I can change that in this drop down list. So I've got my heading 1, I've got some paragraph text explaining what the page is about. And then the next thing that I should be going to in my new section is a heading 2. So, whoops, now in this section, I have some cards here, and these will also need headings to tell screen reader software, what is next in order. So these, you can also change. These should be heading 3s, which I can do in the drop down list. And now this page is accessible. So like I said, if someone is visiting this with screen reader software, it's going to look for these elements. My H1, my next heading is an H2, and then I've got these H3s down here. Now, very commonly, like I said, it's not against the rules to go to an H2 again. Let's say that I have another section underneath this degree section that looks very similar. It's okay because that's a new section. I can still have that be an H2 at the top of it and still have H3s below. I just never want to go like from an H2 to an H4 in this position, if that makes sense. Is this making sense? Sorry, I feel like I'm throwing a lot of information at you. Good, okay. Please let me know if you have any questions.
That's a lot of numbers. It's a lot of numbers.
Right, and like I said, you can always go to this website and it will explain that better. And on this page, you'll notice that I actually put the headings, I actually put them in parentheses for what they are. This page is in a correct structure. You have the H1 at the top. You have the paragraph text in between. Next section is an H2, and then I've got my paragraph text. Next section has the H2, and then it also has some cards or some feature boxes here that then show that those are H3. So like I said, it's fine to have that paragraph text within those as long as they go in the correct order. So next up, we're going to talk about describing images using text. So in Site Manager, this is what's called alternate text. So when I add in an image like this, the first thing I need to ask myself is this image important to the web page? Like if someone visited this page and they were not able to see this image, would it affect their ability to understand the page? In this case, it's just a decorative image and I probably would not need that. However, what we do by default in Site Manager is we add in an alternate text field. But if it were left blank, a screen reader, at least if you have that there and then you leave it blank, the screen reader would assume that it is not an image that's important to the content of the page. But for something like this, let's say that I want this to go to admissions. So for this image, which would be part of the link, I mean, I could leave this blank. So to get into that, what I did is I double click the image and then it brings up this field here. And there's different ways to add alternate text. You'll notice that Site Manager does it this way. You can do it right in the code. And then with documents, depending on what software you're using, it will have ways to add alternate text, and I'll show you that on the document accessibility page. But for Site Manager, this is where you would add it. So I need to decide, is this just a decorative image or is this something, because it's part of the link, do I want to let them know? And really, there's no perfect answer to this. In this case, I'm just going to add it for example's sake, and I can just, I could say admissions, or, I mean, the one thing that you never want to do is say image of duck pond. Just by saying it's alternate text to an image, they know it's an image, so never say image of. But does the user to this page really need to know that that's the duck pond? Probably not, but if I were designing this page and actually wanted them to go to admissions and the image pertained to admissions, then I would probably add admissions, just so if they wanted to read, otherwise they're going to know an image was there but not know what it was. But if I write in admissions, they know it's something to do with the link. So that's how you would add that descriptive text to your images. And you'll notice that you can do that on any image that you add in Site Manager. You can just double click and add that alternate text. It's really easy to do. But once again, ask yourself, is it really part of the content? Let's go back to this page. So guidelines and everything that I'm saying, you can also read on this page, and you can see the benefits, best practices, checking for correct usage, which we'll go over in a few minutes. But yeah, you ask yourself, is it necessary for understanding the page content? Is the image decorative? And if the image is used inside of a link or as a button, then you definitely should have alternate text to let them know where they're going, which segues us into our next topic, which is meaningful links. So in a lot of cases, you'll come across a link that says, click here for more information. That is what we try to avoid, not just whenever possible, but all the time. We never want to say click here for more information, because someone who's happening upon this link, they don't know what that is. Click here for what information? So where this is admissions, instead of saying click here for more information, the best thing for that link would be for me to put admissions. And then have that word, or it may even flow in the text. It may say visit admissions to find out more information, and just the word admissions is linked. And then you can add that link. I'll just put in a fake link for now so you can see it. But whenever you add a link to a web page or on a document, you want it to be descriptive. You want, if a screen reader comes across that and says, this link goes to here, in this case, admissions, they know exactly where they're going. If it says, click here for more information, that's not descriptive. It's not telling them where they're going. So avoid that whenever possible. So you'll find that here as well. It talks about why you should do those things. Next up, we have accessible alternatives for audio and video. This is basically talking about if let's say you have a podcast on your website, it's really best to have a link there, like a descriptive link saying, like for someone who can't hear the audio, you could have a link to an actual document that has the text in it. Alternatively, if it's a video and they can't see it, then there needs to be some sort of text attached to that, whether it be through closed captioning or some sort of document that lets them know the content of that video. You can reach out to the CATS team at Weber State. They're part of my department. They can help you with captioning. You can contact, help me out here, Anna. You can contact
Our
Disabilities office.
Ben, Zach in our office. We're going to have a new video person starting, and they'll have information as well. But Ben, Zach in the marketing and communications office has info.
Okay, great.
I believe Kaltura captions automatically, right?
It does. Kaltura captions automatically. I know YouTube has a similar function, but in a lot of cases, with those automated ones, you'll want to maybe do that, but then go through the video and watch it and edit it, because it doesn't always get it correct. You probably noticed that when you're watching TikTok or something, that it's reading text, but every once in a while it just gets a word here or there wrong. So there are ways to have it automated, but then go in and edit to make sure it's 100% correct. That makes sense. Any questions on that? But yeah, there's several sources on campus that can help you with that. CATS, the disabilities office, sounds like Ben Zach is a good resource. You can contact me if you can't remember who to contact. You can contact Anna and we'll help you get those resources. So the next thing I want to talk about is how do I test to make sure my page is accessible? So there's this great tool called Wave, and it's actually made by the folks at WebAIM. WebAIM is the go-to resource for accessibility. And there's a link here to their website if for some reason you wanted to become fully certified in web accessibility, and they have a separate document accessibility course that you can take. But this Wave tool is free. You can install it into Chrome. I have it installed. And what I can do is just pull up any web page and I can click on that. And it's going to break down all the information that it finds on that page. Some things it's going to flag, but I'm going to be able to determine it's still accessible, but it helps me understand the page. For instance, it has this exclamation point on here. It's asking me, it's saying this is bigger text. Should that be a heading? And it's actually not. I have it set as a stylized paragraph text just to be bigger, but I really want that just to be paragraph text. But what that does, it's checking for my heading structure, and you can see that it's listing this as my H1. It's got my H2. It's fine with me doing a second H2 in the next section, and then it's approving of the structure here. These green ones is telling me that I have alternative text in place. Green is good, red is bad. So what's a good page we could go check that probably has some errors, Anna?
Oh man.
I don't want to pick on anybody.
I know, I'm like, I don't know.
I know I was recently on the Goddard website and I know there were some issues there, so we'll check that one out. So I'm going to run my wave check. It's just a single click and it does that for me. So this one, so here's a good example. I think this is one that I haven't mentioned yet. This is adjacent links go to the same URL. So what this is telling me is that there are actually two links within this box that are going to the same place. That's another thing you want to avoid is redundant links. So you don't want to have a picture above that goes to a site and then have text below that's also a link that goes to the same site. That confuses screen readers. Really, you should just structure that to where maybe the picture isn't a link, but the button is, or you make the entire box a link instead of just the text or just the image, if that makes sense. Excuse me. And that's what this is calling out here is it's not necessarily breaking accessibility, but it's not good practice. And that's what it's calling out there. Here's a good example here. This is an empty link. So basically they've put a link in here, but it's not going anywhere. So you'd click on it and maybe it would reload the page, but it's not going anywhere. And really what's probably happening here is there's two links right next to each other, but that would help you to identify that and go back and fix it. This is also adjacent links. And this text, this read more is actually too small. That really should be, you can go back to the point size on the color page to learn more about that, but that's probably too small for some readers to be able to read. But anyway, you kind of get the point. And I think this one here, so sometimes things like this spacer image missing alternative text, that's fine because it's just a spacer image. It's something that's just meant to push things out a little bit. It really doesn't need alternative text. So sometimes you'll run into those things where you're like, yeah, you're calling it an error, but it's really fine. What's another page we could check?
Go to Faculty Senate.
Is it just Faculty Senate like
Yep.
that? Okay. So let's check this one. So you've got your H1, that's good. This is paragraph text, that's good. This right here, this is a skipped heading level. So what I would suggest here is not to change this necessarily. What I would do is add in a subheading or like a H2 above here that says resources or something like that. And so then it would go in order from that H1 to resources that to then listing out the individual resources as H3. But for the most part, this one actually looks pretty good. So good job. You can get more in depth. You can go into details here and actually it did call out 18 alerts here. So let's see what those are. You've got the skipped heading level, redundant link is another thing. It looks like this is a case where the image and the text is going to the same place. I could help you make these feature boxes like these. And we actually have a version of these that will actually, the entire thing is a link. And let's see here. So this is a case where instead of having linked text down here and a linked image, it's just the entire box that's the link, and that's signified by this little chain link on the top to let people know that that entire thing is a link. I could help you set those up. And that's another thing that I should mention. We have a base code, and you can find that at weber.edu/webdev/style guide. And this is something that you can actually read through and learn, and we'd be happy to give you a tutorial on this as well to be able to use some of these resources that I've shown you. There's buttons and helps you set up sections, cards, kind of like the feature boxes that we've been talking about. It helps you structure your pages like this. It looks daunting, but after an hour of me going through this with you, you'd have a better understanding of how this kind of thing can work. But that's a resource, and that's what my team is for. We have Sharon Dancy, Sydney Knowlton, and myself. You can make an appointment with any of us at any time. We're free, and we can give you tutorials on these. We can look at your website, kind of give you some advice. You're welcome to do that. You could probably call Anna too, but she'll get mad at me for saying that because she's super busy. But
No, you can
And-
call me. I'm here
and
to
she
help.
might just send you to us, which is fine. But yeah, we're here to help. We want to help you get your sites as accessible as possible. Are there any other sites that anyone would like me to check? No?
Yeah, we can check student wellness. We're right now working on it, and like Danny is working on it, and so
Okay, and Danny's really good as well. She knows all this. She's certified in WebAIM. Everyone on my team has done the WebAIM training. A lot of people at Marcom have, Danny's people have. So a lot of people are good resources for this. So this is actually set up really well. This is probably, I'm guessing, saying that this goes to the same thing as this. And sometimes you might look at that and be like, you know what, I get it that it's an alert, but I still want it to be that way. It's not something that's necessarily breaking accessibility, but it's just calling it out. But you can see here that these images do have alternate text, and you can see this actually will show what that alternate text is. And so these are actually great. These are very descriptive. Let's do an empty link. So that might be something you want to take a look at.
yeah, we're still in the process. So she's still working on it. So it's not
Okay.
finished, but I was just like interesting to look. Yeah.
Yeah, and this page looks great.
Lulu also mentioned the TOA page.
Weber.edu/TOA. Is that right? Or what is it?
It's under CME.
Oh, CME. Okay.
Oh, I think the URL is multicultural something.
Yeah, I think that got changed.
It's weber.edu/multicultural. Yeah.
There.
And then TOA is under clubs and organizations.
Whoops. Oh, I should mention this as well. The WebAIM Wave tool is actually built into Site Manager. So if you don't want to add it to your Chrome, you can still access it through Site Manager for each page under this accessibility tag. And that gives you the same report. You can pull that up and it will pull your website up and give you the same exact report. Is this the correct page? I'm assuming so. So this page does not, it looks like, let's see, did it? Yeah, this page does not have an H1. So that's a problem. There should be something right here at the top that says what the page is. I know that that's in this image, but that's actually something that's frowned upon with accessibility is when you add text into an image like that, it's not readable by screen readers because it's embedded. So if someone can't see this, they don't know what that says. Let's see. And sometimes, let's see here. Let's see if it has alternate text behind it. You could have that there, but then it's a good idea to have alternate text that has that text, but you still want to have an H1 on the page to maintain accessibility. So I'm glad we ran into that because that's something that I failed to mention. Really try to avoid embedded text. Like on the Faculty Senate, let's go back to that one for a minute. The difference with these two pages is that this is not embedded. This is actually HTML text that's sitting on top of the image. So it is readable text by a screen reader. And then that's set up to change depending on the size of the page. Whereas in this instance, the smaller the page gets, the smaller that text gets. So if somebody's looking at this on a phone, that text becomes not just embedded in the image, but also far too small to read. So my suggestion there would be at the very least, add alternative text in the background that says Center for Multicultural Excellence. But really you wouldn't need that if you used that text in an H1, but it would be strange to have the redundancy. I mean, honestly, what I would recommend is just removing that text from the image and making that text the H1 below. That sound about right, Anna? Is that what you would recommend?
Yeah, and you're right, Lulu. We're working with y'all to revamp this website so it'll look different shortly. There's a draft, but
please also don't take anything I'm saying as criticism. It's just observation. I'm just kind of looking at it from my point of view of what we could do to improve it. I think this looks great. There's just some things that could be done to improve accessibility.
Yeah, Jeremy, can I quickly clarify? Because that does look really good. It looks like almost like a Marcom image. If you put the text in there, Center for Multicultural Excellence, would that qualify, or you're saying that's probably not a good idea?
No, we could actually do that. So like I was saying with one that I did was Digital District. There are ways to do that. So this is an image, but behind it, I have the alternate text Digital District, if that makes sense. And then this is actual text that sits on top. And then there's actually a way in the code that we could help you do where I actually call out, there are cases where we make the logo itself the H1 and then the alternate text is the text read for the H1. In this case, it's not. This is just an image with alternate text and then my H1 is here. But there are different things we can do. I don't want to make it sound like you have to do one thing or the other, but there are ways we can help you make it the look that you want it to be while also making it accessible. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. So looking at this, I'm guessing, so that's a skipped heading level. So there really should be an H1, and then there should be an H2 in here. And then going to the H3s on the boxes. Excuse me. Let's see this one. So a nearby image has the same alternate text. So this is a case where probably an image here has the exact alternate text as one above. So in a case like that, you would just remove it from one or the other. But yeah, for the most part, this is not bad. It has the alternate text for the logos. But yeah, we would, if you have a page like this and you want us to take a look at it, or you're in the middle of designing a page and you want us to look at it when you're done, please feel free to reach out to us. We would love to do that. Are there any questions on web before I move on to document? Okay, let me close a ton of these windows before I move on. Hey, document accessibility. So same kind of thing. Web, really the reason we became document accessible certified is because there's a lot of documents that get attached from the web. That in and of itself is an accessibility problem. Whenever possible, when people have PDFs linked, we will try to either convert those PDFs into accessible web pages or really determine if they're necessary at all. You want to minimize documents that are attached to a web page just for accessibility reasons, and that can actually ding you on SEO, on search engine results. So it's really a good idea as far as web goes to try to get those into actual web pages. But in a case where you really, I mean, there are situations where it's just like a 30, 40 page PDF and it's just not feasible to make it into a web page or several web pages. Or let's say it's a document that's not meant for web at all. It's a document that you're using for a class or to send out to students or something like that. A lot of these things have a lot of crossover, and for the same reasons, it's the right thing to do. You want to make them accessible to as many things as possible, to as many people as possible. And once again, it's the law. Documents need to be accessible as well. So when you're building documents in, and I list out software here, but obviously there's a lot more software, but this is just trying to, get the vast majority of them. But if you are using a different software than this, that you can search on the web for accessible practices or ways to make them accessible. But Microsoft Word, each of these actually goes to an external website and gives you tutorials on how to make those individual documents accessible within that software. This gets a little harder because there's not a Wave tool for this. I spent a lot of time searching for tools to check accessibility in documents, and it's just a lot more difficult to do that. But as long as you follow these practices, is there somewhere you send people to, Anna, for document accessibility checks?
No.
Yeah.
Just because yeah, they're very hard to build that, or not hard. It's time consuming to build documents that way, and people don't like to do it. And so I just ask them to avoid it.
Right. So you'll notice that when you create documents in any of these softwares that there's a lot of similarity with what I've shown you to web. There are ways to build the structures. It lets you set up a heading structure. You can go into your document software and set up what you want the H1 to look like and what you want the H2 to look like and the H3. And then as you go through your document, you can highlight text and call it out as the H1 and whatever heading that might be. And then by default, any normal text is just paragraph text. Using color is, like I said, there's a lot of crossover there. In fact, incredibly similar. You don't want to use it for color coding. You want to make sure that you've got good contrast. And if you've got any question about a contrast on a document, feel free to go to Site Manager and throw those colors in there and run the document check on that. Like I said, Weber State strives to hit the AA, which is this contrast here, and we avoid anything that's anything like this. So this does meet accessibility standards for Weber. This does not, if that makes sense. So ordered and unordered lists, that's actually a really good thing for screen readers. If you can chunk information into those type of lists, the worst thing you could do is just type the number 1 and then write a bunch of text and then hit return and type 2. You really want to do that, and then, in fact, let me pull up a Word document. So what I'm talking about is I could just go through here and say that's number 1, and Word is actually doing this for me. So by doing this, it's recognizing it, that it should be in a list, and it's doing it for me. But if it were software that weren't, I could highlight those and actually go up into the software and tell it to change it into an ordered list or an unordered list. And that's actually a good way to separate things, to separate the information so screen readers are able to read it easier. Describing images using text, same kind of thing. Each one of these softwares, and you can learn more about the specific softwares at these links, but each one of those is going to give you an opportunity to add alternate text to each image you place in your document. And it may vary a little by software, but if you're creating anything in these or something else, just search for that information to be able to do that. Descriptive links, same thing as web. You just want to make sure that whenever you have a hyperlink in that document that you're not saying click here. You want to actually write out what they're clicking to go through to so they completely understand that. And then there's also a little bonus thing here using charts and infographics. And this is worth reading through. That gets difficult because a lot of times when you're using charts, you have really small text, or they are using colors for information. And each one of those softwares has different ways that you can optimize that. So that's worth looking at as well. And then additional training, like I mentioned, there is not a tool that I'm aware of that you can actually check a document. But there is training available. If you wanted to go to the WebAIM website, you can sign up for the training. There is a fee for that training, but they also have a lot of resources on there for free that can help you with this.
Sean mentioned that he finds creating a document using the correct tools, which makes it accessible, is actually faster than doing bad practices, like the good bold and large, change font to make things look like a heading, just use the styles. And he also mentioned that at least for Word docs, PowerPoint slides, and so on, they have built-in accessibility checkers that will help you correct issues as you go.
Okay, great. And that's the great thing about these softwares is as time has gone on, like Word was correcting it for me as I was doing it, they're constantly guiding you into these practices. So unless you're fighting it and trying to do things differently, a lot of times it will help you and guide you to make sure your documents are accessible. So yeah, I used to do this through InDesign just because it was a really easy way to design and help me keep the document consistent. I would set up my styles before I would even start designing, and then it makes it so much easier just to highlight text and say, oh, this is an H2, and then it styles it for me to my preset style. So while keeping it consistent, I'm also making sure the document is accessible. Did I miss anything, Anna? No? So like I said, these websites are out there at document accessibility, weber.edu/document accessibility, and weber.edu/web accessibility. In the future, I am planning on doing a weber.edu/video accessibility or something of that nature, and then we'll probably combine them into one website for accessibility. But keep an eye out for that. But like I said, you can contact me or anyone on my team at any time. We're happy to help you with this. We're happy to help you with any web needs. And if you come across an error while doing the web tool or something that you don't understand what it is, or you just maybe there's some people on your team that you want to hear this as well, we're happy to do a separate presentation or anything you need to help you to improve this. And that's about all I have. Does anybody have any questions? Comments, complaints? Okay, well, thank you very much.
Yep. Thanks
Yeah.
everybody for coming out, and thank you, Jeremy, for your time. Tomorrow we'll be editing your photographs in Lightroom Classic with Benjamin Zach. So hope to see you guys again tomorrow.
All right, thanks everyone. Thank you for watching this training. By doing so, you are joining us in creating a more accessible future. Together, we can break barriers and ensure that everyone has equal opportunities to succeed.